Welcome, dear friend, to this peaceful journey we will share together. Tonight, we explore ancient Buddhist wisdom stories, each one a key to unlocking the prison of stress, worry, and mental exhaustion that weighs upon your spirit. Feel free to share what time it is where you are listening from. I am honored to guide you through a collection of profound teachings that have brought peace to countless hearts across the centuries. These are not mere bedtime stories. They are transmissions of truth, whispers from awakened beings who discovered the secret to living without the burden of constant stress and anxiety. Each tale carries medicine for the modern soul, remedies for the restlessness that keeps us from the deep rest we desperately need. The great teacher Siddhartha Gautama once said, "Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without." Tonight, we will explore how these timeless narratives guide us back to that inner sanctuary where stress cannot follow and worry cannot penetrate. As each story unfolds, you may notice your breathing becoming deeper, your muscles releasing their grip, and your mind settling into a natural rhythm of ease. So allow yourself to arrive fully in this moment. Release the day that has passed. Let go of tomorrow before it arrives. Take a slow, gentle breath. And as you exhale, open yourself to receive wisdom that has traveled through time to find you here, in this exact moment, ready to transform your relationship with stress forever. Let us begin with a story about the weight we carry unnecessarily. This is the tale of the two traveling monks. On a muddy country road, after days of heavy rain, two Buddhist monks were making their way to a distant monastery. The older monk, Tanaka, had spent 40 years in practice, his face weathered like ancient stone, his eyes holding the depth of mountain lakes. The younger monk, Kenji, had been studying for only 5 years, still eager to prove his dedication and understanding of the monastic rules. As they walked, their robes tucked up to avoid the worst of the mud, they came upon a young woman standing helplessly at the edge of a particularly wide and deep puddle. She wore an elegant silk kimono, clearly expensive, and her face showed genuine distress. The water was far too deep and muddy to cross without ruining her beautiful garment completely. She looked at the two monks with hopeful eyes. "Excuse me, venerable sirs," she called out, her voice soft with embarrassment. "I must cross to reach my family home on the other side, but this water will destroy my clothes. Might you know another way around?" Without a word, the older monk Tanaka walked directly to her, bent down, and lifted her onto his back. He carried her across the deep puddle, her silk kimono safe from the muddy water, and gently set her down on dry ground on the other side. She bowed deeply in gratitude, thanking him profusely, and hurried on her way. The two monks continued their journey in silence. 1 mile passed, then 2, then 5. The sun moved across the sky. Birds sang in the trees. The road dried as they walked further. But Kenji's face grew darker with each step, his jaw clenched, his breathing short and agitated. Finally, after they had walked for 3 full hours, the young monk could contain himself no longer. His words burst forth like water breaking through a dam. "Brother Tanaka," he said, his voice tight with indignation. "How could you do such a thing? We have taken vows. Our rules are absolutely clear. We are forbidden from touching women. It is one of our most sacred precepts. Yet you picked her up. You carried her on your back. You held her in your arms. How could you violate our vows so casually? Do our rules mean nothing to you?" The older monk stopped walking and turned to face his companion. His expression remained calm, even compassionate. "Brother Kenji," he said gently, "I put that woman down 3 hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" The young monk stood frozen, his mouth open, no words coming. In that instant, he saw with perfect clarity what he had been doing. While his body had been walking the road, his mind had been endlessly replaying the scene, judging it, analyzing it, holding it, carrying it like a heavy stone. The woman had continued on her way the moment she was set down, but Kenji had been carrying her for miles, exhausting himself with the weight of his own thoughts. As the Buddha taught, you will not be punished for your anger, you will be punished by your anger. The deeper wisdom here reveals that stress is not caused by events themselves, but by our relationship to those events, by how long we carry them after they have passed. Why do we continue to hold experiences long after they have ended? Buddhist psychology teaches us about a pattern called mental grasping. Our minds have been conditioned to grab onto experiences, especially those that trigger our sense of right and wrong, our ideas about how things should be. Like Kenji carrying the woman in his mind, we carry conversations from this morning, mistakes from last week, worries about next month, each one adding weight to our mental burden. This creates what Buddhists call the second arrow. The first arrow is the actual event, unavoidable, part of life's natural unfolding. The second arrow is our reaction to the event, our endless mental commentary, our refusal to let it pass. The first arrow may cause momentary pain, but the second arrow, the one we shoot at ourselves, creates lasting suffering. Consider your own life right now. What are you still carrying from today? Perhaps a comment from a coworker that felt dismissive. Perhaps a mistake you made that keeps replaying in your mind. Perhaps worry about a conversation you need to have tomorrow. Each of these thoughts is like carrying a person on your back mile after mile, exhausting yourself with weight that could be set down. The Buddha said, holding onto anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. This applies to all forms of mental carrying. When we refuse to put down our thoughts about past events, we burn ourselves continuously with their heat. Zen teacher Shunryu Suzuki taught, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few. Kenji, the younger monk, was so expert in the rules that he lost the ability to see with fresh eyes. He missed the simple act of compassion because he was carrying the weight of shoulds and should nots. The practice of putting down begins with awareness. Throughout your day, notice when you are rehearsing conversations, replaying events, or carrying forward worry about what might happen. In those moments, you can ask yourself the question Tanaka asked Kenji. Why am I still carrying this? When will I put it down? This does not mean we become irresponsible or fail to learn from experience. It means we hold our experiences lightly, learn what they have to teach, and then release them so we can be fully present for what comes next. Like the older monk who carried the woman when carrying was helpful and set her down when it was complete. We learn to engage fully and release completely. Tonight, as you prepare for rest, imagine setting down every burden you have been carrying. See yourself placing each worry, each regret, each anxiety gently on the ground beside the road. Feel the lightness that comes when you stop carrying what no longer needs to be held. Your shoulders drop, your breathing deepens, and you discover that rest was always available, waiting for you to put down your load. As the Buddha taught, let go of what has passed. Let go of what may come. Let go of what is happening now. Do not try to figure anything out. Do not try to make anything happen. Relax right now and rest. This is the gift the old monk offered his young companion, the same gift these ancient teachings offer you. The freedom to put down your burden and walk lighter through the world. Let us continue our journey with a story about perspective and the nature of problems. This is the teaching of the farmer's fortune. In a small mountain village where terraced rice fields climbed the hillsides like green staircases, there lived a farmer known throughout the region for his fine horses. His stallion was particularly magnificent, strong and spirited, with a coat that shone like polished mahogany in the sunlight. Neighbors would stop their work just to watch this beautiful animal race across the pasture. One morning, The farmer awoke to discover his prized stallion had broken through the fence during the night and disappeared into the wild mountains. The gate swung open uselessly, and the pasture stood empty. His neighbors gathered quickly when they heard the news, their faces lined with sympathy and concern. "Such terrible luck," they said, shaking their heads sadly. "Your finest horse, gone. Your most valuable possession, lost to the wilderness. This is truly a disaster for you and your family. What misfortune has befallen your house?" The old farmer listened to their laments with a peaceful expression, his weathered face showing no distress. He simply replied, "Maybe so, maybe not. We shall see." The neighbors walked away confused by his calm response, whispering among themselves about the strange old man who did not react appropriately to obvious misfortune. 1 week later, the stallion returned on his own, and he was not alone. Following behind him came 6 wild mares, beautiful and strong, each one worth a considerable sum. The stallion had found a wild herd in the mountains and led these mares back to the farm. Overnight, the farmer's wealth in horses had multiplied 7-fold. The same neighbors rushed to the farm when they saw the horses. "What incredible luck!" they exclaimed, their voices filled with excitement and perhaps a touch of envy. "Your stallion returned, and he brought 6 wild mares with him. You are now the richest man in horses in the entire valley. This is wonderful fortune. You are truly blessed." Again, the old farmer received their enthusiasm with the same peaceful expression. "Maybe so, maybe not. We shall see." Several days later, the farmer's only son, a strong young man who helped work the farm, was training one of the wild mares. She was not yet accustomed to human riders, and in a moment of panic, she bucked violently. The young man was thrown off and landed badly, breaking his leg in 2 places. The local healer set the bone, but said the young man would need many months to recover and would likely walk with a limp for the rest of his life. Once more the neighbors gathered, this time with genuine sorrow in their eyes. "How terrible," they mourned. "Your only son, injured so badly, during planting season when you need him most, and he may never walk properly again. This is truly dreadful luck. Your good fortune has turned to disaster." The farmer tended his son's injury with gentle care, but his response to the neighbors remained unchanged. "Maybe so, maybe not. We shall see." The villagers left, certain now that the old man was simply in denial about his obvious string of bad luck. The very next week, military officers came through the village with orders from the provincial governor. A war had broken out with a neighboring territory, and all able-bodied young men were being conscripted into the army. They went door to door, taking every young man they found, despite the tears and protests of their families. Everyone knew this war was brutal, and most young men who marched away would never return home. When the officers came to the farmer's house and saw his son with a badly broken leg, they exempted him from service. "He cannot fight or march," they declared, and moved on to the next house. The farmer's son would remain home, safe while his friends and neighbors were led away to almost certain death. Now the neighbors returned with amazement. "You were right all along," they said with wonder. "What seemed like misfortune, your son's broken leg, has saved his life. While our sons march to war, yours will remain safe at home. This is the greatest good fortune imaginable." And the old farmer, his face as peaceful as ever, replied once more, "Maybe so, maybe not. We shall see." The Buddha observed, "Everything that has a beginning has an ending. Make your peace with that, and all will be well." This ancient wisdom points us toward understanding the ever-changing nature of all circumstances and the futility of judging events as simply good or bad. Why do we create such stress for ourselves by labeling every event as fortune or disaster? Buddhist teaching reveals what is called the tyranny of opposites. Our minds have been trained to constantly categorize experience into binary pairs: good or bad, lucky or unlucky, success or failure. This constant judging creates tremendous mental exhaustion. Each time we label something as bad, we create stress by resisting what is. Each time we label something as good, we create stress by trying to hold on to it and fearing its loss. We place ourselves on an emotional roller coaster, riding up and down with circumstances that are constantly changing regardless of our judgments about them. The farmer understood something profound that most of us forget. He recognized what Buddhists call the interdependence of all things. Every event arises from countless causes and conditions, and each event becomes the cause of countless future conditions. The stallion's escape led to new horses, which led to the son's injury, which led to his exemption from war. Where does good fortune end and bad fortune begin? They are not separate, but woven together in a tapestry too complex for our limited perspective to judge accurately. Consider the events of your own life that you labeled as disasters when they occurred. How many of those led to unexpected opportunities, important lessons, or new directions you would never have discovered otherwise? The job you lost that led to a better career, the relationship that ended that made space for deeper love, the illness that taught you to value health and live more consciously, and consider the events you celebrated as great fortune. How many of those led to complications, responsibilities, or difficulties you had not anticipated? The promotion that increased your salary but destroyed your work-life balance. The acquisition that brought temporary pleasure but long-term debt. The success that raised expectations you struggled to maintain. Zen Master Sheng Yen taught, "We should be able to refuse things we like and accept things we dislike." This points to the freedom available when we stop being pulled around by our constant judgments of preference. We can experience life as it unfolds without adding the extra layer of stress that comes from demanding it be different. The practice suggested by the farmer's wisdom is called holding lightly. This means we can fully engage with life's ups and downs while maintaining a part of our awareness that remains steady and undisturbed, recognizing that our current perspective is always limited and temporary. When something you label as bad happens, you can acknowledge the difficulty while adding the farmer's wisdom. This is challenging right now. Maybe so, maybe not. I cannot see the full picture. I will respond as skillfully as I can and remain open to possibilities I cannot yet imagine. When something you label as good happens, you can enjoy it fully while also adding, "This is pleasant right now." Maybe so, maybe not. I will appreciate this moment without grasping it so tightly that I cannot release it when circumstances change. This is not about becoming passive or indifferent. The farmer still cared for his horses, tended his son's injury, and worked his farm diligently. But he did all of this without the added stress of believing he knew whether events were ultimately fortunate or unfortunate. Tonight, as you review the events of your day or your week, notice how much energy you have spent judging circumstances as good or bad. What would it feel like to release those judgments and simply acknowledge what is? Can you sense the possibility that what you currently label as your biggest problem might be setting up conditions for unexpected benefit? Can you hold your current good fortune lightly, knowing it will transform into something else, as all things do? The Buddha said, "All conditioned things are impermanent. Work out your salvation with diligence." The farmer worked diligently at his farm while recognizing that all circumstances are conditioned, temporary, and far more complex than they appear. In this recognition, he found a peace that his neighbors, constantly swinging between despair and elation, could never access. As you prepare to rest tonight, imagine yourself standing in the farmer's shoes, your feet planted firmly on earth that has supported countless generations. Your perspective widened beyond the immediate moment. From this vantage point, the stress of today's events begins to dissolve. revealed as judgments about a story that has not yet finished unfolding. Let us now explore a teaching about comparison and the poison of measuring ourselves against others. This is the story of the two monks and the tree. In a peaceful monastery nestled among ancient pine forests, two young monks began their training on the same day. They were given adjacent meditation cells, attended the same teachings, ate the same simple food, and followed the same rigorous schedule of practice. Despite these identical conditions, their inner experiences could not have been more different. The first monk, whose name was Daichi, approached his practice with sincere dedication, but also with natural ease. When he sat in meditation, his mind settled relatively quickly. When he studied the sutras, understanding came without excessive struggle. When he worked in the monastery gardens, he found a rhythm that felt natural and satisfying. He was not perfect by any means, but his progress felt steady and his heart remained mostly at peace. The second monk, named Hiroshi, struggled intensely with every aspect of training. When he sat in meditation, his mind raced with thoughts like a river in flood. When he studied the teachings, the words seemed to slip away before he could grasp their meaning. When he worked in the gardens, he felt clumsy and inefficient compared to others. Most painfully, he watched Daichi's apparently effortless progress and felt his own heart fill with despair. Every morning during meditation, Hiroshi would open his eyes just slightly to peek at Daichi sitting beside him. Daichi's posture looked perfect, his face peaceful, clearly deep in meditative absorption. Hiroshi's own back ached, his legs screamed with pain, and his mind would not stop its endless chatter. Every comparison increased his suffering. After several months of this private torment, Hiroshi could bear it no longer. He approached the monastery's master teacher, a wizened old monk named Sato, who had guided students for more than 50 years. Hiroshi bowed deeply and poured out his troubled heart. "Master," he said, his voice breaking with emotion, "I am failing completely at practice. I sit beside Daichi every day, and I can see how naturally everything comes to him. His meditation is deep, while mine is shallow. His understanding is clear, while mine is confused. His work is graceful, while mine is awkward. No matter how hard I try, I cannot match his progress. Perhaps I am simply not suited for this path. Perhaps I should leave the monastery and stop wasting everyone's time with my inadequacy." Master Sato listened with his entire being, his eyes soft with compassion. When Hiroshi finished speaking, the master rose slowly from his seat. "Come with me," he said gently. "There is something I wish to show you." He led the young monk out of the meditation hall and into the forest surrounding the monastery. They walked in silence along a narrow path until they came to a small clearing where two trees grew side by side, so close their branches nearly touched. "Look at these two trees," Master Sato said, pointing to them. "This one here," he indicated the tree on the left, "is a cedar. It has grown tall and straight, reaching up toward the sky with great height and impressive stature. Beautiful, is it not?" Hiroshi nodded, admiring the cedar's towering presence. "And this one," the master continued, pointing to the tree on the right, "is a pine. See how it grows differently? It is not as tall as the cedar, and its branches spread wide rather than reaching straight up. Its trunk is thick and gnarled, shaped by winds the cedar did not face. It has taken a completely different form." The master turned to look directly at his troubled student. "Now tell me, Hiroshi, which of these trees is growing incorrectly? Which one is failing at being a tree? Which one should give up and stop growing because it cannot match the other?" Hiroshi opened his mouth to answer, but found he could not. The question revealed its own absurdity. Both trees were growing exactly as their nature intended. The cedar was being perfectly cedar, and the pine was being perfectly pine. Neither was wrong. Neither was failing. They were simply different expressions of the same fundamental life force. You see, Master Sato said softly, you are comparing your pine nature to Daiichi's cedar nature and declaring yourself a failure because you do not grow in his shape. But you are not meant to grow in his shape. You are meant to discover and fully express your own unique way of manifesting Buddha nature. Daiichi's path is his path. Your path is yours. They may look very different, and that difference is not a problem. It is simply reality. The master placed a gentle hand on Hiroshi's shoulder. The Buddha did not teach that all minds must work the same way, or that all students must progress at the same pace. He taught that each being must discover their own liberation through their own sincere effort. Your struggles are not signs of failure. They are your particular curriculum, teaching you lessons that Daiichi may never need to learn. His apparent ease may mean he misses lessons that your difficulty is teaching you. Tears began to flow down Hiroshi's face, but they were tears of relief rather than sorrow. Something tight and painful that had been constricting his chest for months suddenly released. He saw with shocking clarity how much suffering he had created by constantly measuring himself against his fellow monk, how much energy he had wasted in comparison that could have been devoted to his own sincere practice. From that day forward, when Hiroshi sat in meditation beside Daiichi, he no longer opened his eyes to check on his companion's posture or peaceful expression. He simply returned his attention again and again to his own breath, his own experience, his own unfolding path. The racing thoughts still came, but now he met them with patience rather than judgment. The difficulty remained, but the suffering born of comparison dissolved. Years later, both monks attained deep realization, each in their own time and their own way. Daiichi's path had been marked by steady, quiet progress. Hiroshi's path had been marked by struggle, doubt, and the hard-won wisdom that comes from working with a difficult mind. When they compared notes much later, each recognized that the other had learned lessons they themselves had missed. Both paths had been perfect and necessary. The Buddha taught, do not compare yourself to others. You will become bitter or vain because there will always be those greater or lesser than yourself. This ancient wisdom addresses one of the most common sources of modern stress, the constant comparison that social conditioning has trained us to perform automatically. Why do we cause ourselves such suffering? Through endless comparison. Buddhist psychology explains that our ego structure, the sense of separate self, maintains itself partially through measuring and ranking. The ego asks constantly, am I winning or losing? Am I ahead or behind? Am I better or worse? These questions seem to provide information about our position in the world, but actually they create a prison of perpetual dissatisfaction. When comparison shows us ahead of others, we experience temporary inflation, followed quickly by fear of losing our superior position. When comparison shows us behind others, we experience deflation and either despair or aggressive striving to catch up. Both states generate stress. Neither generates genuine peace or authentic development. The deeper teaching here points to what Buddhists call your original nature. This is the awareness that exists before all comparisons, before all measurements, before all judgments of better and worse. This nature is not in competition with anyone because it recognizes itself as part of a larger whole, like individual trees in a forest, each contributing to the forest's health, not through being identical, but through expressing their unique characteristics. Consider how much of your daily stress arises from comparison. Perhaps you scroll through social media and measure your life against carefully curated images of others' highlight reels. Perhaps you evaluate your body against impossible cultural standards. Perhaps you judge your career progress against colleagues who started at different points with different advantages. Perhaps you measure your spiritual development against teachers or practitioners whose journeys have been entirely different from your own. Each act of comparison contains a hidden aggression toward yourself or others. When you judge yourself as lacking, you attack your own adequacy. When you judge yourself as superior, you attack others' worth. Both forms of violence create suffering. The practice suggested by the two trees begins with noticing. Throughout your day, catch yourself in the act of comparing. Notice the physical sensation that accompanies comparison, often a tightening in the chest or stomach, a subtle anxiety, a contraction of your natural openness. In those moments, you can remember the master's question, which tree is growing incorrectly? This does not mean you cannot learn from others or appreciate excellence when you see it. The cedar can admire the pine's resilience without believing it should abandon its own nature to become pine-shaped. You can appreciate qualities in others while honoring your own unique configuration of strengths and challenges. The Buddha said, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." This teaching points toward the revolutionary act of offering yourself the same unconditional positive regard you might offer to a tree growing in a forest. You would not criticize a pine for not being a cedar. Can you extend that same acceptance to your own unfolding? Tonight, as you settle into rest, imagine yourself as a tree growing in a vast forest. You are surrounded by countless other trees, each one different, each one perfect in its own expression. Some are tall, some wide, some young, some ancient. None is more tree than another. Your task is not to match their shape, but to grow fully into your own unique form, extending your roots deep, reaching your branches wide, offering your particular gifts to the forest whole. Feel the relief that comes when you stop trying to twist yourself into someone else's shape. Sense the energy that becomes available when you redirect it from comparison toward authentic development. Notice how much lighter you feel when you release the exhausting work of constantly measuring yourself against others. As the Buddha taught, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. The peace you seek will never come from winning the comparison game because that game has no final victory. It comes from opting out of comparison entirely and recognizing your inherent completeness exactly as you are, a perfect expression of this moment's unfolding. A unique manifestation of universal consciousness, a tree growing exactly as it should. Let us journey deeper with a teaching about attachment and the illusion of permanence. This is the story of the Master's favorite cup. Master Rikyu was known throughout Japan not only for his profound Zen realization, but also for his mastery of the tea ceremony. In his simple dwelling, he owned very few possessions, as befitting a monk who had released attachment to material things. However, he did have one object that he particularly appreciated, a teacup of extraordinary beauty. This cup had been crafted by a legendary potter 3 generations earlier. Its glaze captured light in a way that seemed almost magical, shifting from deep blue to soft green depending on the angle and illumination. The shape fit perfectly in the hand, and when tea was poured into it, the warmth radiated through the clay in a most pleasing way. It was, by any measure, a masterpiece of ceramic art. Students who visited Rikyu's dwelling would always notice this cup, and many commented on its exceptional beauty. The master would smile and agree, serving tea in it during their visits, clearly taking pleasure in its elegance. Yet something about his relationship to the cup was different from how most people related to their prized possessions. One day, a particularly observant student named Kenzo noticed something curious. After preparing tea and serving it in the beautiful cup, Master Rikyu held it for a moment, admiring its form. But as he looked at it, Kenzo heard the master whisper something almost inaudible. Leaning closer, he heard Rikyu say softly to the cup, "You are already broken." Unable to contain his curiosity, Kenzo asked, "Master, why do you say the cup is already broken? It sits perfectly whole in your hands. There is not a crack or chip anywhere on it. it appears as beautiful and intact as the day it was created. Rikyu smiled at his student's question, the kind of smile that suggested he had been waiting for someone to notice and ask. He held the cup up to the light, turning it slowly so its glaze danced with color. "You are correct," he said. "At this moment the cup is whole and beautiful. But tell me, Kenzo, what is the nature of all created things? What is the fundamental truth the Buddha taught about all forms?" "That all conditioned things are impermanent," Kenzo replied, reciting one of the most basic Buddhist teachings. "Everything that arises must pass away." "Exactly," Rikyu nodded. "This cup, beautiful as it is, arose from clay, water, fire, and the potter's skill. It appeared in this form at a particular moment in time, and because it came into being, it will necessarily pass out of being. Perhaps tomorrow I will drop it. Perhaps next year an earthquake will shake it from its shelf. Perhaps 100 years from now, it will be worn down to dust. But certainly, inevitably, this cup will break. It is not a question of if, but when." The master paused, letting his words settle into his student's awareness before continuing. "Most people believe they love beautiful things," he explained. "They acquire objects they treasure and feel joy in possessing them. But watch what happens when those objects are damaged or lost. The supposed love transforms instantly into suffering. They cry, 'My precious cup is broken. My beautiful possession is destroyed.' This reveals that what they actually loved was not the cup itself, but their idea of permanent ownership, their fantasy that they could hold on to something forever." Rikyu placed the cup gently on the table between them. "I genuinely appreciate this cup's beauty. I feel joy each time I use it. But because I have already accepted its inevitable breaking, I am free to love it completely without the shadow of fear. I do not grasp it desperately, worried about protecting it from its fate. I do not agonize over every moment of use, anxious that this might be the moment it breaks. I simply enjoy it fully while it is here, and when it breaks, as it certainly will, I will remember it with gratitude rather than mourning its loss." He picked up the cup again and poured tea for his student. "This is how we must hold everything we love: our possessions, our relationships, our own bodies, even our lives. All of these are already broken. All are temporary forms that will dissolve. When we accept this truth deeply, not just intellectually, but in our bones, we become free to love fully without the contamination of desperate clinging." Years later, the cup did indeed break. A visiting student accidentally knocked it from the table, and it shattered on the stone floor. Those present looked to Master Rikyu with concern, worried he would be devastated by the loss of his treasured possession. Instead, he looked at the broken pieces for a long moment, then smiled. "Ah," he said peacefully, "the cup has moved from potential to actual. It was always going to break. Now it has fulfilled that destiny. Let us appreciate the many moments of beauty it offered before this transformation." He swept up the pieces carefully, not with sorrow, but with the same reverence he had shown the cup when it was whole. Some of the fragments he kept, later using them in the garden as part of a pathway where their colored glaze caught sunlight and rain, beautiful in a new form. The Buddha observed, "All compounded things are impermanent. Strive on with diligence." This teaching points toward understanding that stress often arises not from change itself, but from our resistance to the inevitable truth of impermanence. Why do we create so much suffering by pretending that impermanent things are permanent? Buddhist psychology teaches about a deep delusion at the root of human consciousness. Despite overwhelming evidence that everything changes, we constantly act as though we can freeze time, hold on to beloved conditions forever, and prevent the natural flow of arising and passing away. This delusion manifests in countless ways throughout our lives. We fall in love and immediately want to possess that love to guarantee it will never change or end. We achieve success and desperately try to maintain it, terrified of the inevitable downturns. We look in the mirror and mourn each sign of aging, as though bodies were meant to remain young forever. We accumulate possessions and feel violated when they wear out or break. Each instance of grasping generates stress. We tighten around what we love, trying to protect it from time's flow, and in that very tightening, we squeeze the joy out of our experience. Like holding a beautiful butterfly too tightly, our desperate grip destroys the delicate beauty we were trying to preserve. The teaching of the cup, already broken, offers a radically different approach. When we deeply accept that everything we encounter is temporary, we paradoxically become free to experience it more fully. Without the constant background anxiety of potential loss, we can be completely present to what is here now. Consider your own relationships with people and things you value. How much of your stress comes from fear of losing them? How much mental energy goes into trying to control outcomes, prevent change, or hold on to conditions that are naturally fluid? This controlling effort is like trying to prevent waves from moving on the ocean's surface. It exhausts us while accomplishing nothing. Zen teacher Suzuki Roshi said, "In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few." When we approach each moment with a beginner's mind, knowing everything is temporary, we become intimate with reality as it actually is, rather than as we wish it would be. The expert mind that believes it can control and preserve creates its own suffering through this fundamental misunderstanding. The practice suggested by Master Rikyu's relationship with his cup involves what might be called loving with open hands. This means we appreciate beauty, enjoy relationships, care for possessions, all while maintaining awareness of their temporary nature. We do not love less because we acknowledge impermanence. We love more completely because we are not distracted by desperate grasping. This does not mean we become careless or fail to maintain things appropriately. Rikyu clearly cared for his cup, using it with attention and placing it safely when not in use. But his care arose from appreciation rather than from fear. There is a profound difference between these motivations. When you care for something because you fear losing it, the care itself becomes contaminated with stress. You hover anxiously, checking constantly, never quite able to relax. When you care for something because you appreciate it, while accepting its temporary nature, the care becomes an expression of love without the burden of anxiety. The Buddha taught, the root of suffering is attachment. This is often misunderstood to mean we should not love people or appreciate beautiful things. But the Buddha did not teach detachment from life. He taught non-attachment, which is completely different. Non-attachment means we engage fully with life while not demanding that it conform to our desire for permanence. Tonight, bring to mind something or someone you treasure, perhaps a person you love, a place you call home, a cherished object, or even your own health and vitality. Now practice Rikyu's realization. Acknowledge silently, this is already gone. This is temporary. This will change. Notice what happens in your body and mind when you do this. At first, you might feel sadness or fear. That is natural. But stay with the practice. As you accept the inevitable impermanence, notice if something else emerges. Perhaps a deeper appreciation for the present moment. Perhaps a release of the constant background tension of trying to prevent loss. Perhaps a fuller ability to love what is here now without the contamination of anxious grasping. The broken cup teaches us that endings are not failures, but completions. The cup served its purpose beautifully for many years, bringing pleasure to countless tea ceremonies. Its breaking did not erase that contribution. Similarly, when relationships end, when experiences conclude, when beloved conditions change, this does not invalidate their value. It simply reveals their nature as temporary visitors in the flowing river of our lives. As you prepare for sleep tonight, Imagine yourself holding everything you love with the same wise appreciation Master Rikyu held his cup. See yourself enjoying completely while gripping nothing desperately. Feel the paradoxical truth that by accepting loss before it comes, you become free to experience fullness right now. In this acceptance lies a peace that cannot be broken, even when everything else shatters. Let us continue with a teaching about the stories we tell ourselves and the prisons we create with our own minds. This is the tale of the tiger and the strawberry. A traveling monk found himself pursued by a fierce tiger through wild mountain terrain. His heart pounding, legs burning, he ran as fast as he could, the tiger's roars echoing behind him, getting closer with each breath. Ahead, he saw the mountain drop away into a cliff face. Without time to think, he spotted a thick vine growing down the cliff and grabbed it, swinging himself over the edge just as the tiger's claws swiped the air where he had been standing. Hanging on the vine, his chest heaving, the monk looked down to see how far he might need to descend to reach safety. His heart sank. Far below, hundreds of feet down, another tiger paced back and forth at the base of the cliff, looking up at him with hungry eyes. This second tiger had clearly seen him grab the vine and was now waiting patiently for him to descend or fall. The monk looked up. The first tiger peered over the cliff edge, snarling, occasionally reaching down with massive paws, trying to swipe the vine. The monk looked down again. The second tiger waited with the patience of a predator who knows its meal cannot escape. Then the monk heard a new sound, a small gnawing noise close to his head. He turned to look at where the vine was attached to the cliff face and saw two mice, one white and one black, emerging from a crack in the rock. Systematically, methodically, they were chewing through the vine's fibers. With each tiny bite, the vine weakened, bringing him closer to an inevitable fall into the waiting jaws below. Above, a tiger ready to tear him apart. Below, a tiger ready to devour him. And now, the very vine that held him suspended between these two fates was being gnawed away moment by moment. Death was certain, coming from multiple directions, with no escape visible anywhere. In this moment of absolute hopelessness, the monk noticed something, growing from a small crack in the cliff face, right beside where he hung. A single wild strawberry plant had somehow found purchase in the rock. And on this plant, one perfect strawberry grew, bright red, glistening with morning dew, fully ripe. The monk reached out carefully, maintaining his grip on the vine with one hand, and plucked the strawberry. He brought it to his lips and took a bite. The taste exploded in his mouth, sweet and intense, the flavor amplified by his complete presence in that moment. Not distracted by regret about past mistakes that had led him into tiger country. Not consumed by anxiety about the future that seemed to offer only death. Simply here now, experiencing the full reality of this perfect strawberry. How delicious, he whispered, taking another bite. The Buddha taught, the secret of health for both mind and body is not to mourn for the past, worry about the future, or anticipate troubles, but to live in the present moment wisely and earnestly. This ancient wisdom points toward the fundamental choice we face in every moment, especially those filled with stress and apparent danger. Why do we so easily abandon the present moment to live in fearful stories about what might happen? Buddhist psychology explains that the human mind evolved to anticipate threats and plan for the future. This capacity helped our ancestors survive genuine physical dangers. But in modern life, this same mechanism creates almost constant stress by projecting catastrophic narratives about situations that may never occur. The tigers in this story represent the many threats we face, both real and imagined. The tiger above might be our past, the mistakes we have made, the regrets that chase us, the failures that seem to pursue us no matter how far we run. The tiger below might be our future, the inevitable aging, illness, and death that await everyone, the uncertain outcomes we cannot control. the losses we know are coming but cannot prevent. And the mice, one white and one black, represent the passage of time itself, day and night, light and dark, each moment gnawing away at our remaining lifespan. We might interpret them as the seconds ticking by, each one bringing us closer to the end we all share. From one perspective, the monk's situation is hopeless. He cannot defeat two tigers. He cannot stop the mice from chewing through the vine. His death appears inevitable and imminent. Most of us, in his position, would be completely consumed by terror, our minds racing through futile escape plans, our bodies paralyzed by anxiety about the approaching end. But the monk makes a radically different choice. He does not deny the reality of his situation. The tigers are real. The mice are real. The danger is genuine. Yet he also recognizes another truth. In this exact moment, there is a perfect strawberry, and in this exact moment, he is alive enough to taste it. This is not escapism or denial. It is a profound teaching about where life actually exists. Life does not exist in our fearful stories about the past or future. It exists only here, only now, only in this breath, this sensation, this present experience. The monk hanging on the vine is more alive than most people who live in safety, but never taste their strawberries because their minds are elsewhere. Consider your own relationship with present moment experience. How often are you truly here? When you eat, are you tasting the food, or are you replaying conversations from earlier in the day? When you spend time with loved ones, are you fully present with them, or are you worrying about tasks you need to complete? When you rest, does your mind rest, or does it spin through endless scenarios about problems that might emerge? The stress we experience is often not about our actual present circumstances, but about the stories we tell ourselves about those circumstances. Right now, as you engage with these words, you are probably safe. Your basic needs are likely met in this moment, yet your mind might be generating stress by traveling to past regrets or future anxieties, abandoning the relative peace of now to visit imagined hells. Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh taught, "The present moment is the only moment available to us, and it is the door to all moments." When we learn to return again and again to present experience, we discover that most of our suffering exists only in our mental projections, not in the reality of what is actually happening now. The practice suggested by the strawberry teaching is simple but not easy. Throughout your day, notice when your mind has left the present to worry about future tigers or regret past mistakes. In those moments, you can practice finding your strawberry, something in your immediate experience that is actually okay or even pleasant right now. Perhaps it is the taste of water when you are thirsty. Perhaps it is the warmth of sunlight through a window. Perhaps it is the sensation of breathing, which means you are alive. Perhaps it is the feeling of feet on solid ground, which means you are supported. These small acknowledgments of present reality do not deny genuine difficulties. They simply refuse to add unnecessary suffering by abandoning now for mental time travel. This does not mean we never plan for the future or learn from the past. The monk undoubtedly learned something about traveling safely through tiger territory if he survived. But there is a profound difference between wise planning that serves life and anxious rumination that only generates stress without producing useful action. The Buddha said, "Do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment." This is not a command to become reckless or irresponsible. It is an invitation to recognize that the power to respond skillfully exists only now. Worrying about future outcomes does not help us respond skillfully. Being fully present does. Tonight, as you settle into rest, practice being the monk with the strawberry. Acknowledge the tigers of your life, the past you cannot change, and the future you cannot control. Notice the mice of time, gnawing away at the vine of your remaining days. These are realities. Do not deny them. And then deliberately bring your attention to something present that is okay right now. Perhaps it is the softness of your pillow. Perhaps it is the darkness that allows rest. Perhaps it is the simple rhythm of breathing that requires no effort on your part. Perhaps it is the awareness itself that knows all these experiences. This strawberry, this present moment reality, is not a distraction from your real life. It is your real life. Everything else is memory or imagination. Only this is actually occurring. And in learning to taste this moment fully, you discover a peace that does not depend on eliminating all threats or solving all problems. You discover the peace that is available right now, even in difficult circumstances, when you stop abandoning the present for stories about past and future. As the ancient teaching reminds us, yesterday is history, tomorrow is mystery, but today is a gift. That is why it is called the present. The monk received his gift, hanging between two tigers. Your gift awaits in whatever moment you find yourself in, no matter how challenging. Will you taste your strawberry? Now, let us explore a teaching about effort and the art of appropriate action. This is the story of the monk who tried too hard. In a mountain monastery where meditation was practiced with great intensity, a young monk named Sokan had developed a reputation for his excessive zeal. He would sit in meditation longer than anyone else, often from before dawn until late at night, barely pausing for meals. His back was rigid with effort, his face tight with concentration, and his entire body trembled with the strain of trying to force his mind into perfect stillness. During work periods, while other monks paced themselves in sustainable rhythms, Sokan would attack every task with furious energy. He carried the heaviest loads, worked through rest periods, and pushed himself until exhaustion. He believed that enlightenment would come through sheer force of will, that if he simply tried hard enough, meditated intensely enough, and exhausted himself sufficiently, awakening would have no choice but to arrive. Yet despite all this tremendous effort, Sokan found no peace. His meditation remained agitated. His mind grew more turbulent rather than less. His body developed chronic pain. And worst of all, he felt himself growing further from the peace he sought rather than closer to it. The harder he tried, the more elusive tranquility became. One day, Master Hakun called Sokan to his chambers. The old teacher was known for his ability to point students toward insight through simple demonstrations. He held in his hands a traditional stringed instrument, a biwa, which he sometimes played during ceremonies. "Sokan," the master said gently, "I understand you played the biwa before you came to the monastery. Is this true?" "Yes, master," Sokan replied, wondering where this conversation was leading. "I studied music for many years before taking vows." "Good," Hakun said, placing the instrument in Sokan's hands. "Then you understand strings. Tell me, what happens if you tune a string too tightly?" Sokan thought for a moment. "If the string is too tight, master, it will break when you try to play it. The sound will be sharp and unpleasant, and if you continue to tighten it, it will snap completely." "Yes, exactly," the master nodded. "And what happens if you leave the string too loose?" "If the string is too loose," Sokan explained, "it will produce no clear tone at all. The sound will be muddy and dull, lacking the vibration needed to create music. No song can be played on slack strings." Master Hakun smiled, his eyes twinkling with the light of someone about to offer a key to a locked door. "So, the string must be neither too tight nor too loose, but tuned to exactly the right tension to produce beautiful music. Not forced, not slack, but balanced precisely according to its nature and purpose." He paused, letting this observation settle before continuing. "Your spiritual practice is exactly like this string, Sokan. You have been tuning yourself far too tightly, pulling with such force that you are about to break. You believe that more effort always equals more progress, But this is not how awakening works. The mind, like the string, requires exactly the right tension. Not lazy effort, but not desperate forcing either. Balanced, appropriate effort that can be sustained and that allows the natural music of your Buddha nature to emerge. Sokan felt something release in his chest, a tightness he had been carrying for so long he had forgotten it was there. "But Master," he said, his voice uncertain, "I have always heard that the spiritual path requires tremendous dedication and effort. I have been trying to demonstrate my sincere commitment through the intensity of my practice." "There is a great difference," Hakun replied, "between appropriate effort and exhausting force. The Buddha himself discovered this truth when he practiced extreme asceticism before his enlightenment. He fasted until his body was nearly dead, meditated until he collapsed, pushed himself to the very edge of destruction. And what did he discover? That torturing the body and mind does not lead to freedom. He called this the middle way, the path between self-indulgence and self-mortification, between laziness and exhausting force. The master picked up the biwa and plucked one string, which produced a pure, clear tone that hung in the air between them. Listen to this sound. It comes from right tension. The string is neither being strangled nor allowed to hang loose. It is tuned to its perfect pitch, and from this balance, beauty emerges effortlessly." He looked at his student with deep compassion. "You have sincerity, Sokan. You have dedication. These are valuable qualities, but you must learn to apply them with wisdom. Sit in meditation, yes, but for reasonable periods that do not destroy your body or create aversion in your mind. Work diligently, yes, but in ways that are sustainable and do not burn you out. Practice with consistency rather than intensity, with patience rather than force." From that day forward, Sokan transformed his approach. He still practiced diligently, but he learned to feel for the right tension, like tuning a string. He sat in meditation for shorter periods, but with greater consistency. He worked during work time, but rested during rest time. He discovered that when he stopped trying to force awakening, creating space instead of pressure, insights began to arise naturally, like flowers opening when conditions are right, rather than being pried open by impatient hands. The Buddha taught, "The wise ones fashion speech with their thought, sifting it as grain is sifted through a sieve." This wisdom applies not just to speech, but to all aspects of practice. We must learn to apply exactly the right amount of effort, neither too much nor too little, sifted through the sieve of wisdom. Why do we believe that more effort always produces better results? Western conditioning teaches us that success comes from pushing harder, working longer, trying more intensely. This approach may work for certain material goals, but spiritual development follows different principles. The mind cannot be forced into peace any more than sleep can be forced or love can be commanded. Buddhist psychology recognizes what is called the paradox of effort. We must try, but not try too hard. We must apply ourselves, but not with such force that we create new tension. This is one of the most difficult balances to find because our conditioning pushes us toward extremes. Either we are lazy and undisciplined, or we are exhausting ourselves with excessive striving. The middle way between these extremes requires constant adjustment and sensitivity. Consider areas of your life where you might be tuning the strings too tightly. Perhaps you push yourself at work until you are constantly exhausted and resentful. Perhaps you force yourself through exercise routines that injure your body rather than strengthening it. Perhaps you apply such harsh self-discipline that you create internal rebellion rather than sustainable growth. Perhaps you try so hard to control your thoughts during meditation that you create more mental noise rather than less. The teaching of the biwa string invites us to develop what Buddhists call wise effort. This means learning to feel into situations and apply exactly the amount of energy required, no more and no less. Like tuning an instrument, this requires sensitivity and constant adjustment. The right tension today might be too tight tomorrow if conditions change. Zen Master Dogen taught, "To study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self." This forgetting cannot be forced. The harder you try to forget yourself, the more present the self becomes. But when you find the right effort, neither forcing nor slacking, the self naturally becomes transparent, like clear water that allows you to see the stones at the bottom without the water itself being visible. The practice suggested by this teaching involves checking in regularly with your level of effort. In meditation, notice if you are straining, if your jaw is clenched, if your shoulders are raised, if your breath is restricted, you are tuning too tightly. Relax slightly, finding a balance between alertness and ease. In daily activities, notice if you are pushing so hard that you have lost all enjoyment, or if you are slacking so much that you feel stagnant. Neither extreme serves your development. The Buddha said, "Happiness never decreases by being shared, but happiness also never increases by being forced." Peace is found not by generating it through effort, but by removing the obstacles that prevent its natural arising. Like tuning a string to allow music to emerge, we adjust our effort to allow our natural wisdom and compassion to express themselves. Tonight, as you prepare for rest, notice any ways you might be trying too hard even to relax. Some people bring such determination to falling asleep that they create insomnia through their very effort. Can you find the right tension? Alert enough to release consciously into rest, but not so alert that you prevent sleep's natural arrival. Committed enough to put aside the day's concerns, but not straining to force them away. Imagine yourself as that perfectly tuned string, not pulled so tight you might break, not so loose you cannot resonate, but balanced precisely in that middle way where your natural tone can emerge without force. In this balance, you discover that the peace you have been seeking through exhausting effort was always available, waiting patiently for you to stop trying so hard and simply allow it to be. Let us journey forward with the teaching about wisdom and the difference between knowledge and understanding. This is the tale of the scholar and the ferryman. A renowned scholar who had spent 30 years studying Buddhist scriptures decided to make a pilgrimage to a famous monastery across a wide river. His head was filled with philosophical concepts, his memory packed with quotes from ancient texts, and his reputation as an expert in Buddhist doctrine had spread throughout the region. He carried with him several precious manuscripts, proud of the knowledge he had accumulated through decades of dedicated study. At the riverbank, he found a simple ferryman preparing his small wooden boat for the crossing. The ferryman was an old man, weathered by sun and wind, his clothes patched and faded, his hands rough from years of rowing. To the scholar's educated eye, this was clearly an uneducated peasant, probably illiterate, certainly ignorant of the profound teachings that filled the scholar's mind. As they began the crossing, the scholar felt compelled to share some of his vast knowledge. Perhaps he could educate this simple boatman, offer him something valuable to think about during his mundane daily labor. "Tell me, ferryman," the scholar began in a voice that carried just a hint of condescension. "Have you studied the Lotus Sutra? It contains some of the Buddha's most important teachings about the nature of reality and the path to enlightenment." The old ferryman pulled steadily on his oars, his rhythm unchanged. "No, sir," he replied simply. "I cannot read. I know nothing of sutras." The scholar shook his head with pity. "How unfortunate. You have wasted at least a quarter of your life then, missing the profound wisdom contained in those sacred texts." The ferryman nodded, continuing his steady rowing, showing no sign of offense at the scholar's judgment. Encouraged by this humble acceptance, the scholar continued, "And what about the Abhidharma? Have you studied the detailed analysis of consciousness and mental phenomena? Understanding these teachings is essential for anyone who wishes to progress on the spiritual path." "I am sorry, sir," the ferryman said quietly. I know nothing of such things. I only know how to row my boat and read the river's moods." "Dear me," the scholar exclaimed, his pity deepening. "Then you have wasted at least half of your life. These teachings are fundamental to Buddhist practice. Without them, how can you hope to understand the nature of mind?" The old man simply continued rowing, his face peaceful, his movements economical and graceful. The boat glided smoothly across the water, responding to subtle adjustments of the oars that the scholar, for all his learning, would never have been able to replicate. Feeling quite pleased with himself for trying to help this ignorant peasant, the scholar launched into a lengthy discourse about emptiness, dependent origination, and the two truths of conventional and ultimate reality. He quoted from memory, his words flowing with scholarly precision, demonstrating the breadth of his learning. The ferryman listened politely while maintaining his steady rowing pace. When the scholar finally paused for breath, the old man glanced at the sky where dark clouds had been gathering, unnoticed by the passenger, absorbed in his own words. "Forgive me, sir," the ferryman said with quiet urgency, "but do you know how to swim?" The scholar looked surprised by this irrelevant question. "Swim? No, of course not. I have devoted my life to scholarly pursuits, not physical activities. Why do you ask such a thing?" The ferryman pointed to the approaching storm. "Because that dark cloud brings a tempest? I have seen many times on this river. We will not reach the shore before it arrives. The wind will overturn this small boat, and we will both be thrown into deep water." He paused, then added with gentle sadness, "I am sorry to tell you, sir, but if you cannot swim, you are about to waste all of your life, not just a part of it. All your knowledge of sutras and philosophy and will not keep you afloat. In a few minutes, what you know will not matter. Only what you can do." As if responding to his words, the storm struck with sudden fury. The wind tore at the boat, waves rose like walls of water, and within moments, the small craft capsized exactly as the ferryman had predicted. Both men were thrown into the churning river. The scholar, weighted down by his precious manuscripts and his inability to move skillfully in water, immediately began to sink. His mind, so full of concepts about emptiness, could not help him now. His memory, packed with quotes about the nature of suffering, could not keep him from drowning. But the old ferryman, who knew no sutras, who could not read a single word of philosophy, moved through the water with the same natural grace he had shown with his oars. He swam to the struggling scholar, grabbed him firmly, and pulled him toward the shore with strong, steady strokes, born from a lifetime of working with the river's power. When they finally reached the muddy bank, both men collapsed, breathing heavily. The scholar's precious manuscripts floated away, ruined, carrying his 30 years of accumulated knowledge back into the depths. The old ferryman had saved only the man himself. As they caught their breath, the ferryman looked at the scholar with eyes that held no judgment, only kindness. "Forgive me, sir, for saying so, but perhaps all of life has been teaching you to swim, and you have been so busy studying books about water that you never learned to move in it. The Buddha taught, however many holy words you read, however many you speak, what good will they do you if you do not act upon them?" This ancient wisdom points toward the fundamental difference between conceptual knowledge and lived understanding, between ideas about truth and direct experience of reality. Why do we confuse intellectual knowledge with wisdom? Modern education trains us to accumulate information, to pass tests about concepts, to speak impressively about ideas we may have never actually integrated into our being. We learn to mistake the map for the territory, the menu for the meal, the words about swimming for the ability to stay afloat. Buddhist teaching makes a crucial distinction between what is called knowing about and knowing through. Knowing about Buddhism means you can discuss emptiness, explain dependent origination, quote from sutras, and impress others with your learning. Knowing through Buddhism means your understanding has penetrated so deeply that it transforms how you actually move through life, like the ferryman's knowing of the river that came not from books, but from decades of direct relationship with its currents, moods, and dangers. The scholar's stress came from living in his head, in a world of concepts disconnected from direct experience. The ferryman's peace came from living in his body and immediate circumstances, responding skillfully to what was actually present, rather than to ideas about what should be present. Consider your own relationship with spiritual teachings or any area of knowledge. How much of what you know about exists only as concepts in your mind? How much has actually been digested and integrated into how you live, respond, and navigate challenges? The difference between these two reveals the gap between knowing about and knowing through. You might know intellectually that all things are impermanent, but does that knowing prevent you from grasping desperately at what you love? You might be able to explain that stress comes from mental habits rather than circumstances, but does that explanation help you remain peaceful when difficulties arise? You might understand conceptually that you are not your thoughts, but do you live from that understanding or remain identified with every passing mental pattern? Zen Master Dogen taught, to study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be enlightened by all things. Notice that he speaks of studying the self, not studying ideas about the self. This is the crucial difference. The ferryman studied the river directly. The scholar studied books about reality. When the test came, only one kind of knowing could keep them alive. The practice suggested by this teaching involves moving your spiritual understanding from the conceptual realm into embodied practice. This means taking what you know intellectually and testing it in the laboratory of your actual life. It means less time consuming more information and more time sitting with and digesting what you already know. When stress arises, do not simply recall teachings about why stress is optional. Instead, investigate your actual experience in that moment. Where is the stress located in your body? What thoughts are you believing that create the sensation? Can you be with the physical feeling without adding the conceptual story? This is learning to swim rather than learning about swimming. When conflict emerges in relationships, do not simply remember that the Buddha taught loving kindness. Instead, actually practice generating that quality in real time with this actual difficult person. Feel the resistance in your heart. Notice the judgmental thoughts. Choose to soften anyway. This is the difference between knowing the concept of compassion and knowing through embodied compassionate action. The Buddha said, "An idea that is developed and put into action is more important than an idea that exists only as an idea." Every teaching you encounter is worthless until it moves from your intellect into your lived experience. The journey from head to heart to hands is the journey from information to transformation. Tonight, as you review what you have heard during this time together, notice if you are collecting these stories as interesting concepts to think about or as invitations to practice. The scholar collected sutras. The ferryman developed capacity. Which kind of collection will keep you afloat when the storms of life inevitably arrive? Consider choosing just one teaching that has resonated during this journey and committing to actually practicing it rather than simply appreciating it as an interesting idea. Perhaps it is the practice of putting down what you are carrying mentally. Perhaps it is noticing when you are comparing yourself to others. Perhaps it is remembering that what seems unfortunate may lead to unexpected fortune. Whatever you choose, practice it in real situations, not just in theory. Learn to swim, not just to talk about water. As you settle into rest, release the burden of collecting more information. You already know enough. What you need is not more concepts, but deeper integration of what you already understand intellectually. Let your sleep be a time when knowledge moves from head to heart, from concept to capacity, from information to transformation. Trust that wisdom is not something you accumulate, but something you become through practice. Like the ferryman who became one with the river through a lifetime of direct relationship. Let us now explore a teaching about freedom and the cages we build from our own preferences. This is the story of the monk and the crystal palace. A young monk named Jiro had the great fortune to be invited to practice at an exclusive monastery known for providing ideal conditions for spiritual development. This monastery had been built by a wealthy patron who spared no expense in creating what he believed would be the perfect environment for awakening. The meditation hall was constructed from rare woods, its acoustics designed to amplify the sound of silence. The sleeping quarters offered individual rooms, rather than the communal dormitories common in other monasteries, each one appointed with comfortable furnishings. The food served was not simple monastery fare, but carefully prepared vegetarian cuisine that was both nutritious and delicious. The gardens were immaculately maintained, providing peaceful walking paths among flowering trees and perfectly still ponds. Every possible comfort had been anticipated and provided. The temperature was always perfect, never too hot or cold. The schedule was flexible, allowing monks to practice according to their personal rhythms rather than adhering to rigid structure. Rules were minimal, trusting in the maturity and dedication of the practitioners. It was, by any conventional measure, a paradise for spiritual seekers. Jiro threw himself into practice with tremendous enthusiasm. He had everything he could possibly need and nothing to complain about. Yet within 6 months, something unexpected began to happen. Despite the perfect conditions, or perhaps because of them, Jiro found himself becoming increasingly irritable and restless. When his tea was served at a slightly different temperature than he preferred, he felt annoyance arise. When another monk made a small noise during meditation, it disturbed his concentration profoundly. When the meal included a vegetable he did not particularly enjoy, his mind generated complaints. When rain clouds obscured the beautiful garden view, he felt his mood darken. Each small deviation from perfect conditions created a ripple of dissatisfaction that spread through his consciousness like ink dropped in water. He had become so accustomed to having everything exactly as he liked it, that the smallest imperfection triggered stress and resistance. Confused and disturbed by this development, Jiro sought guidance from the monastery's teacher, an old master named Zeno, who had spent many years in various practice environments. Jiro explained his predicament, his voice colored with shame. "Master, I do not understand what is wrong with me. I have been given every possible advantage for practice. This place offers ideal conditions that most monks could never access, yet I find myself becoming more agitated rather than more peaceful. Small inconveniences that I once would not have noticed now disturb me greatly. I seem to be moving backward rather than forward." Master Zeno listened with the complete attention that characterized his presence, then rose from his seat. "Come with me," he said. "I want to show you something." He led Jiro to the monastery gardens, where an ornate bird cage sat on a stone pedestal. Inside, a beautiful songbird hopped from perch to perch, singing occasionally. The cage itself was an artwork, made from delicate crystal and precious metals, spacious and clean. This cage, Zeno explained, was commissioned by our patron, who believes that birds, like monks, should have the finest accommodations. Look how spacious it is, how clean, how beautiful. The bird receives the choicest seeds, the freshest water, protection from predators and harsh weather. Every need is anticipated and met. By any measure, this bird has an ideal life. He paused, letting Jiro observe the bird carefully. "Now tell me, is this bird free?" Jiro looked at the beautiful cage and the bird within it. "No, master. Despite all its comforts, the bird is still trapped. It cannot fly where it wishes or experience the full range of what its nature intends. Exactly. Zeno nodded. And more than this, notice what happens to a bird that lives its entire life in such conditions. It becomes dependent on them. If you were to open the cage door, this bird would likely not leave. It has lost its capacity to navigate the real world with its unpredictability and challenges. The very comforts meant to serve it have become a prison. The master placed his hand on Jiro's shoulder. You are like this bird, my student. This monastery, for all its genuine beauty and good intentions, has become a crystal cage. You have grown so accustomed to perfect conditions that you have lost the freedom to be at peace regardless of conditions. Your happiness has become conditional on everything being exactly as you prefer. This is not liberation. This is a subtle form of imprisonment. He gestured toward the monastery walls. Out in the world, people face heat and cold, noise and chaos, simple food and uncomfortable beds, difficult people, and challenging circumstances. If your peace can only exist here, in this carefully controlled environment, then you have not developed real freedom. You have simply created a dependency on external conditions being arranged just so. Jiro felt something crack open in his understanding. He had believed that the path to peace required eliminating all difficulties and creating perfect conditions. Now he saw that this approach had made him fragile rather than strong, dependent rather than free. What should I do, Master? He asked quietly. Zeno smiled. You have learned what this place has to teach you. Now you must learn what only challenges can teach. Go to the mountain monastery where conditions are harsh, where you will be cold in winter and hot in summer, where the food is plain and scarce, where you share a room with 20 others who snore and move in their sleep, where the schedule is rigid and demanding. There, in those difficulties, you will have the opportunity to develop real freedom, the kind that does not depend on circumstances being comfortable. Following his teacher's guidance, Jiro made the journey to the mountain monastery. The contrast was immediate and intense. Everything was difficult, uncomfortable, challenging. At first, he suffered tremendously, his mind protesting constantly about the harsh conditions. But gradually, something began to shift. Because he could not depend on external conditions providing comfort, he was forced to find peace within himself regardless of circumstances. When it was cold, he learned to be at peace with cold. When hungry, at peace with hunger. When tired, at peace with fatigue. His happiness stopped being conditional on things being a certain way. Years later, when he returned to visit Master Zeno, he brought a gift, a small wooden cage he had carved with its door permanently open. Thank you, he said to his teacher, for showing me that the most beautiful cage is still a cage, and that real freedom means being at peace even when conditions are difficult. The Buddha taught, attachment leads to suffering. This ancient wisdom reveals that we can become attached not just to pleasant things, but to pleasant conditions themselves. When our peace depends on circumstances being arranged just so, we have made ourselves prisoners of our own preferences. Why do we believe that ideal conditions will bring us peace? Modern culture constantly reinforces the message that happiness comes from arranging circumstances perfectly. If only you had the right job, the right relationship, the right living situation, the right amount of money, then you would finally be happy. This belief drives endless striving while delivering only temporary satisfaction. Buddhist psychology recognizes what might be called the paradox of comfort. A certain level of basic comfort supports practice and well-being, but too much comfort, too perfectly maintained, actually weakens our capacity for genuine freedom. Like muscles that atrophy without resistance to work against, our spiritual capacity diminishes when everything is always exactly as we prefer. The Crystal Palace represents our modern tendency to insulate ourselves from anything unpleasant. We control temperature precisely, curate our social media to show only what we want to see, avoid people who challenge us, demand accommodation for every preference, and believe we have a right to never be uncomfortable. This creates what Buddhists might call spiritual fragility, the inability to remain at peace when conditions are not ideal. Consider your own life and notice where you might have built crystal palaces. Perhaps you can only relax in a very specific environment with exact conditions. Perhaps your mood depends entirely on other people behaving as you prefer. Perhaps you require perfect health to feel okay, or perfect outcomes to maintain equanimity. Each of these dependencies is a bar in a cage of your own construction. The teaching here is not that we should seek out suffering or reject reasonable comfort. The middle way remains valid, but it asks us to examine whether our preferences have become requirements, whether our comforts have become dependencies, whether we have traded freedom for the illusion of perfect conditions. Zen Master Bonnke taught, "If you want to be free, get to know your real self. It has no form, no appearance, no root, no basis, no abode, but is lively and buoyant. It responds with versatile facility, but its function cannot be located. When you look for it, you become further from it. When you seek it, you turn away from it all the more." This real self that Bonnke points toward is free precisely because it does not depend on conditions being any particular way. The practice suggested by this teaching involves deliberately working with less than ideal conditions as a training ground for real freedom. This does not mean creating unnecessary suffering, but it does mean noticing where you might be, avoiding normal discomforts that could strengthen your capacity for unconditional peace. Perhaps you could practice being content with a simple meal rather than requiring perfectly prepared food. Perhaps you could sit in meditation even when the temperature is not perfectly comfortable. Perhaps you could engage with someone whose views challenge you rather than only surrounding yourself with those who agree. Perhaps you could allow yourself to be bored rather than constantly seeking stimulation. Each time you practice being at peace with less than ideal conditions, you weaken the bars of your cage. Each time you find contentment, regardless of circumstances, you discover a freedom that perfect conditions could never provide. The Buddha said, "Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without." The Crystal Palace sought to provide peace through perfect external conditions, but real peace can only be found within, in the part of you that can be at ease whether conditions are pleasant or unpleasant, comfortable or challenging, exactly as preferred or completely different from preference. Tonight, as you prepare for rest, notice any ways your mind might be insisting that conditions be perfect for you to relax. Perhaps you need absolute silence. Perhaps the temperature must be exact. Perhaps your pillow must be positioned precisely. While there is nothing wrong with reasonable preferences, notice if they have become requirements, if your peace has become conditional on circumstances being arranged just so. Then practice finding peace even if conditions are not perfect. Can you rest even if there is a small sound? Can you relax even if the temperature is slightly too warm or cool? Can you let go even if everything is not exactly as you prefer? In this practice, you discover real freedom, the kind that travels with you everywhere because it depends on nothing external. As you release into sleep, imagine the cage door opening. Feel yourself free to be at peace regardless of circumstances, no longer imprisoned by your own preferences, no longer dependent on conditions being ideal. This is the freedom the Buddha pointed toward, available not in some perfect future when everything is arranged just right, but here and now, in the midst of whatever conditions you find yourself in. Now let us turn to a teaching about identity and the roles we play throughout our lives. This is the tale of the actor and the masks. In ancient China, there lived a celebrated actor named Liang who was renowned throughout the empire for his ability to inhabit any character completely. He could play emperors and beggars, warriors and scholars, young lovers and ancient sages, each performance so convincing that audiences forgot they were watching a performance at all? Liang's skill came from his complete dedication to his craft. When preparing for a role, he would spend months studying the character, absorbing every detail until the boundaries between himself and the role dissolved. During performances, he did not pretend to be the character. He became the character so thoroughly that his own personality seemed to disappear entirely. This gift brought him fame, wealth, and the admiration of everyone who saw his performances. Yet as the years passed, Liang began to experience a troubling problem. After particularly intense performances, he would find it difficult to return to being himself. Sometimes for hours, sometimes for days after a show ended, he would still speak and move as the character he had played, unable to fully release the role. At first, this seemed like merely an occupational inconvenience, but gradually, the problem deepened. Liang began to lose track of which aspects of his behavior were authentically his and which were borrowed from roles he had played. When he felt anger, was that his genuine emotion, or was he channeling a wrathful character from last season? When he felt joy, was that real, or was he performing happiness as he had learned to do on stage? The question that haunted him most deeply was this: if he removed all the masks, all the roles, all the characters he had learned to play, what would remain? Who was Liang when he was not performing? After decades of becoming other people so completely, did he still exist at all? This existential crisis drove him to seek out a renowned Zen master named Huangbo, who lived in a simple hermitage far from the capital's theaters. Liang made the long journey, and when he finally stood before the master, he bowed deeply and presented his dilemma. "Master Huangbo," he said, his voice carrying the trained projection of a professional performer, even in this humble setting. "I have spent my entire life perfecting the art of becoming other people. I can be anyone, play any role, inhabit any character so completely that I disappear into them. But now I cannot find myself. When I remove all the masks, I find only emptiness. I do not know who I am without a character to play. Can you help me discover my true self?" Huangbo looked at him for a long moment, then said something unexpected. "Perform for me now. Show me your greatest role." Confused but obedient, Liang considered his vast repertoire. He thought of the powerful roles he had played: the emperor commanding armies, the scholar solving impossible riddles, the warrior facing death with courage. He prepared to demonstrate his craft, gathering his energy to transform. But before he could begin, Huangbo held up a hand. "Wait, I have changed my mind. Do not show me a role from your repertoire. Instead, perform something you have never rehearsed, never studied, never prepared. Show me Liang with no mask, no character, no performance. Can you do this?" The actor opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again. He tried to access this non-performing version of himself, but found nothing there. Every gesture he might make had been refined through years of training. Every expression had been practiced. Every word would emerge shaped by technique. He could not find a way to be present that was not a performance of some kind. "I do not know how," he finally admitted, and in that moment of genuine confusion, something authentic broke through. His shoulders dropped slightly, his breathing changed, his face relaxed into uncertainty rather than projecting any controlled expression. For just an instant, the performer disappeared and something raw and unpolished appeared. "There," Huangbo said immediately. "That. What just happened is closer to your true nature than any role you have ever played. Did you notice it?" "I felt," Liang said slowly, still in that unguarded state. "I felt like I did not know what to do or how to be, like I was lost." "Yes," the master nodded. "And in that lostness, you were more found than you have been in decades. The person who does not know what to do, who has no script to follow, no character to hide behind. That vulnerable uncertainty is closer to your original face than any mask you have perfected. Huangbo continued, his voice gentle but clear. You asked who you are without the masks, and you said you found only emptiness. But you misunderstood what you discovered. That emptiness is not the absence of self. It is your true nature. You are not the roles you play. You are the awareness that can play any role without being limited to any single one. He picked up a simple clay cup from beside him. This cup can hold tea, water, wine, or nothing at all. The cup's nature is not defined by what it contains, but by its capacity to hold whatever is poured into it. Similarly, your true nature is not any particular role or character. It is the capacity to embody any role while remaining fundamentally free of all of them. The master set down the cup. You have mastered the art of becoming characters so completely that you forgot you were the one doing the becoming. An actor less skilled than you plays a king but knows he is still himself wearing a costume. You played a king so thoroughly that you forgot the costume could be removed. Now you must learn the deeper art, the art of playing all roles while knowing none of them are ultimately who you are. Over the following months, Liang studied with Huangbo, learning to witness his own performing. He continued acting in plays, but now with a subtle difference. He would fully embody characters, but a part of his awareness remained uncaptured, watching the performance from a space that was not performing. He learned to be completely committed to roles while simultaneously knowing they were temporary appearances, like clouds passing through the sky of his awareness. Paradoxically, this made him an even better actor, because he no longer confused himself with his roles. He could take greater risks, explore darker characters, and embody more challenging personas without fear of losing himself. And when the performance ended, he could release the role completely, like taking off a coat, and rest in the awareness that wore all costumes while being defined by none. The Buddha taught, all phenomena are empty of inherent existence. This applies not just to external objects, but to the sense of self we carry. The various roles we play throughout our lives, parent, professional, friend, victim, hero, failure, success, are all temporary appearances, masks worn for a time, but not the face beneath all masks. Why do we identify so completely with our roles that we forget they are roles? From childhood, we receive constant messages about who we are. You are a good boy, a smart girl, an athlete, an artist, a leader, a helper. These labels stick to us like wet paper, and over time we mistake them for our actual identity. We forget that we are the awareness wearing these labels, not the labels themselves. Buddhist psychology recognizes what is called the not-self teaching. This does not mean you do not exist. It means the self you think you are, constructed from roles, labels, stories, and identifications, is not a solid, unchanging essence, but a fluid process, constantly shifting depending on context and conditions. Consider the various roles you play throughout a single day. In the morning, you might be a parent getting children ready for school, then a commuter navigating traffic, then a professional in meetings, then a friend over lunch, then a patient at a doctor's office, then a customer at a store, then a partner at home in the evening. In each context, you become slightly different, emphasizing different aspects of personality, speaking differently, even carrying your body differently. Which one is the real you? Buddhist wisdom suggests none of them and all of them. You are the awareness that can play all of these roles while being limited to none. Like Liang the actor, you have the capacity to fully inhabit each character while remaining free to move into the next role when circumstances change. The stress we experience often comes from over-identifying with particular roles. When you believe you are primarily your professional identity, job loss becomes an existential crisis rather than simply a change in circumstances. When you identify completely as a parent, Your children's independence can feel like losing yourself. When you believe you are your body, aging becomes a tragedy rather than a natural transformation. Zen master Yunmen taught, "Every day is a good day." How can this be true unless we recognize that our essential nature is not determined by the roles we play or the circumstances we face? The awareness that can say every day is a good day is not identified with the character who sometimes has challenging days. It rests in a deeper spaciousness. The practice suggested by this teaching involves learning to witness your own performances. Throughout your day, notice when you shift roles. Feel the slight adjustment that happens when you change from one context to another. Observe how you are not any single role, but the capacity to move between all of them. You can also practice what might be called role rehearsal. Before entering a situation where you will need to play a particular role, take a moment to consciously acknowledge that you are about to put on a mask. This is not being inauthentic. It is recognizing the nature of social existence. Then, after the situation, practice removing the mask consciously, acknowledging that you are returning to the spaciousness that is not limited to that particular character. The Buddha said, "In the sky, there is no distinction of east and west. People create distinctions out of their own minds and then believe them to be true." Similarly, in the spacious awareness that you truly are, there is no fixed identity, no permanent character. You create these distinctions, these roles, these identities, and then forget that you created them. Tonight, as you prepare to rest, practice removing all the masks you wore today. Release your role as parent, as professional, as anything at all. Feel yourself settling into the awareness that wore all these costumes, but is not defined by any of them. Like an actor after the final curtain, you can remove the makeup, hang up the costume, and rest in the simple presence that needs no performance. In this restful spaciousness, you discover something liberating. You are free to play any role life requires without being trapped in any of them. You can fully commit to your performances while knowing they are temporary appearances. And when roles end, as all roles eventually do, you remain unchanged, like the sky that remains after clouds pass, like the awareness that persists through all the changing scenes of your life. Let us continue with a teaching about generosity and the unexpected sources of wisdom. This is the story of the beggar's gift. In a prosperous city, where merchants traded goods from distant lands and wealthy families built elaborate temples to demonstrate their devotion, there lived a young monk named Kenji who served at one of the grandest monasteries. This monastery had been built through the generous donations of the city's richest citizens, and it stood as a testament to their wealth and piety. Every day, important benefactors would arrive at the monastery gates with impressive offerings. Silk merchants brought bolts of the finest fabric for the monks' robes. Rice dealers donated entire cartloads of premium grain. Tea importers provided the rarest leaves from distant mountains. Each donation was announced formally, recorded in the temple's ledger, and the donor's name was inscribed on plaques that lined the walls, ensuring their generosity would be remembered for generations. The abbot of the monastery, Master Takuan, would personally greet these important donors, thanking them with elaborate ceremony and offering blessings that matched the scale of their contributions. The larger the donation, the more elaborate the recognition. This seemed perfectly natural to everyone, including Kenji, who served as an assistant during these formal proceedings. One morning, as Kenji was sweeping the temple steps before the wealthy donors began arriving, an old beggar approached the gate. His clothes were not just simple but truly ragged, held together with rough patches and string. His face bore the marks of a hard life, weathered by sun and wind and hunger. In his hands, he carried nothing of obvious value, just a small cloth bundle. The beggar bowed humbly at the gate and called out, "Honored monks, I wish to make an offering to the Buddha and this temple." Kenji approached, expecting to politely redirect this poor man. Surely, He could not have anything worth offering to such a grand monastery. But before Kenji could speak, Master Takuan appeared from within the temple. The old master had somehow heard the beggar's words and had come immediately. To Kenji's shock, Master Takuan bowed deeply to the beggar, far more deeply than he had bowed to any of the wealthy merchants. "Please," the master said with profound respect in his voice, "come in. You honor us with your presence." The beggar seemed as surprised as Kenji by this reception. Hesitantly, he followed the master into the temple grounds. Master Takuan led him not to the outer receiving area where other donors were greeted, but directly into the main temple hall, a space reserved for the most sacred ceremonies. The beggar carefully unwrapped his small bundle. Inside were 3 things: a handful of rice, perhaps enough for a single small bowl, a few copper coins so worn their markings were barely visible, and a small, wilted flower he had apparently picked from a roadside. "This is all I have," the beggar said, his voice apologetic. "I know it is not much compared to what others can give, but I wanted to offer something to honor the Buddha's teachings, which have given me comfort even in my difficult life." Master Takuan received these humble offerings with both hands, holding them as carefully as he would hold the most precious relics. His eyes filled with tears, and when he bowed to the beggar this time, he bowed lower than Kenji had ever seen him bow to anyone. "Your gift," the master said, his voice thick with emotion, "is the most valuable offering this temple has ever received. I am humbled by your generosity." After the beggar left, blessed and fed, Kenji could not contain his confusion. He approached his master with the question that burned in his mind. "Master Takuan, forgive me, but I do not understand. This morning, a wealthy silk merchant donated enough fabric to make robes for every monk in our temple for 3 years. You thanked him politely, but briefly. Last week, a rice dealer gave us enough grain to feed the monastery for 6 months. You bowed once to him, but to this beggar who gave only a handful of rice and a few worthless coins, you bowed deeply multiple times and called his gift the most valuable we have ever received. How can this be?" Master Takuan smiled at his student with the expression of someone about to share a profound secret. "Come, sit with me. Let me explain what you witnessed, but did not yet understand." They sat together in the quiet temple, and the master continued. "When the silk merchant gave us enough cloth for 3 years of robes, do you know what portion of his wealth that represented? That donation was perhaps 1/20th of what he owns. He still has 19 times that amount remaining. His gift, while useful to us, required no sacrifice from him. His life continues exactly as before. He gave from his excess." The master paused, letting this sink in before continuing. "When the rice dealer gave us 6 months of grain, that was probably 1/30th of his yearly inventory. He still has abundant supplies for his family and his business. His gift required no change in how he lives. He gave what he would barely miss." "But the beggar," Master Takuan's voice became soft with reverence. "The beggar gave us everything he had. That handful of rice was probably meant to be his only meal today. Those copper coins represented perhaps the only money he possesses in the world. That flower cost him nothing to pick, but he chose it carefully, wanting to offer beauty even though he lives with so little of it." The master looked directly into Kenji's eyes. The beggar's gift required complete sacrifice. After giving to us, he walked away with nothing, not knowing where his next meal would come from, or how he would survive tomorrow. Yet he gave anyway, because his faith and his gratitude were greater than his fear. This is the difference between generosity and donation. The wealthy give from their surplus without feeling the loss. The poor give from their necessity and feel it deeply. He gestured toward the plaques lining the walls, each one bearing the name of a wealthy benefactor. These donors give to be recognized, to secure merit, to have their names remembered. There is nothing wrong with this. Their donations are valuable and help us serve our purpose. But the beggar gave anonymously, expecting nothing, not even acknowledgement. He gave purely from the heart, because giving itself was the reward. The Buddha taught, Master Takuan continued, that the value of a gift is not measured by its size, but by the spirit in which it is given and the sacrifice it requires. A rich man who gives a fortune while keeping 10 fortunes for himself has given less than a poor woman who gives a single coin when that coin is all she has. The scriptures tell of a widow who gave 2 small copper coins to the temple, and the Buddha said her gift was greater than all of the gold donated by the wealthy because she gave everything she had. Kenji felt something shift in his understanding. He had been measuring value by external standards, by quantity and market worth. But his master was pointing to something entirely different, a form of wealth that had nothing to do with material abundance. From this day forward, Master Takuan said, I want you to watch not what people give, but how much they keep. I want you to notice not the size of the offering, but the size of the heart that offers it. I want you to understand that true generosity is not about having much to give, but about giving much of what you have, even when you have little. Years later, Kenji would remember this teaching whenever stress arose around money, possessions, or resources. He learned that the anxiety of not having enough came from comparing his gifts to others' surplus rather than measuring them against his own capacity. He discovered that true generosity, the kind that transforms the giver and the receiver alike, has nothing to do with the amount given and everything to do with the willingness to give. The Buddha taught thousands of candles can be lighted from a single candle, and the life of the candle will not be shortened. Happiness never decreases by being shared. This wisdom reveals that true wealth is not what we possess, but what we are willing to share, measured not by quantity, but by the quality of our giving heart. Why do we measure generosity by amount rather than by sacrifice? Modern culture trains us to evaluate everything through quantifiable metrics. We count dollars donated, hours volunteered, acts of service performed. These measurements have their place, but they miss the essence of what makes giving truly generous. Buddhist teaching recognizes what might be called the widow's mite principle, named for that biblical story the Buddha's teaching echoes. The principle states that the value of a gift is determined by what remains after giving, not by what is given. Someone who gives $1 million while retaining 10 million has kept more than they gave. Someone who gives $10 when that represents their last money has given everything. This teaching applies far beyond material wealth. Consider how you give your time, attention, energy, love. Do you offer only surplus? Only what you can easily spare without noticing its absence? Or do you sometimes give in ways that actually cost you something, that require sacrifice, that leave you feeling the gift's absence? The stress many people experience around generosity comes from comparing their capacity to give with others' apparent abundance. You see someone donate a large sum and feel your smaller contribution is inadequate. You watch someone volunteer extensively and feel your limited time offering is insufficient. But this comparison misses the point entirely. Zen Master Shunryu Suzuki taught, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few. The beginner approaches giving with a heart that simply offers what it can, not calculating or comparing. The expert mind calculates, strategizes, and in doing so, often misses the opportunity for genuine generosity that transforms both giver and receiver. The practice suggested by this teaching involves shifting your attention from what you give to how you give. This means becoming aware of whether you are offering from surplus or from substance, from security or from trust, from abundance or from scarcity that gives anyway. Try this experiment. The next time you give something, money, time, attention, help, notice what remains. Did you give from overflow, from what you would not miss? Or did you give in a way that requires adjustment in your own life, that asks you to trust there will be enough even after sharing? Neither approach is wrong, but only the second transforms the giver. When you give only surplus, you remain unchanged by the transaction. When you give from substance, you practice the faith that sharing does not diminish, but somehow multiplies what matters most. The beggar in our story walked away with nothing material, yet he walked away wealthier in spirit than any merchant. He had practiced the ultimate freedom, the ability to release even survival resources in service of something greater than self-preservation. This is not about being irresponsible or creating unnecessary hardship. It is about discovering that the tight grip of acquisition and preservation creates its own form of poverty, while the open hand of genuine sharing opens doors to unexpected abundance. The Buddha said, "In separateness lies the world's greatest misery. In compassion lies the world's true strength." When we give only from surplus, we maintain separation. When we give from substance, sharing in the vulnerability of not knowing if there will be enough, we discover our fundamental interconnection with all beings. The beggar's gift was valuable precisely because it dissolved the boundary between self and other, between mine and yours. Tonight, as you review your day, notice the various ways you gave or held back. Were there moments when you gave freely, even generously, but only from surplus? Were there moments when you could have shared something that would have cost you more, but chose to keep it? Neither is wrong, but only the second invites transformation. Consider what it might mean to be like the beggar, approaching each day willing to offer what you have, not from a place of reckless disregard, but from deep trust that giving itself creates the abundance we seek. Not the abundance of accumulation, but the abundance of circulation, where what flows through us matters more than what we hold on to. As you settle into rest, imagine the relief of traveling light, of not needing to protect and preserve everything you have. Feel what it might be like to live with an open hand, sharing freely because you trust deeply. In this openness, stress about resources begins to dissolve. You discover that the anxiety of not having enough often comes not from actual scarcity, but from the exhausting effort of holding tight to everything you have. The beggar left the temple with nothing and everything. Nothing in his hands, but everything in his heart. He had practiced the ultimate generosity, the willingness to give all, and in that giving, discovered a wealth that cannot be measured or depleted. This is the secret the Buddha taught, that true abundance comes not from accumulating more, but from developing the capacity to give freely, to share openly, and to trust deeply that there will always be enough when we release the illusion that happiness comes from holding on. Let us conclude our journey together with a final teaching about presence and the gift of this very moment. This is the story of the Master's last lesson. An elderly Zen master lay on his deathbed, surrounded by his most devoted students who had gathered to receive his final teaching. They had studied with him for decades, and now they waited with heavy hearts, hoping he would share some ultimate wisdom before his departure from this world. For 3 days, the master lay silently, his breathing shallow, his eyes mostly closed. The students took turns sitting with him, some weeping quietly, others meditating beside his bed, all hoping for some profound final words that would illuminate their understanding and guide them after he was gone. On the evening of the 3rd day, the master's eyes opened more clearly than they had in hours. He looked around at the faces of his students, their expressions heavy with anticipation and sorrow. He gestured weakly for them to come closer. The students leaned in, some taking out paper and brushes to record whatever precious wisdom was about to be spoken. This would surely be the culmination of all his teaching, they thought, the essential truth distilled from a lifetime of practice and realization. The master's voice, when it came, was barely a whisper. They had to strain to hear his words. "Do you want to know?" he began slowly. "The most important teaching I can give you." "Yes, Master," they replied in unison, their hearts beating faster with anticipation. "The most important thing," he continued, each word requiring visible effort, "is this." He paused for what seemed like an eternity, and the students held their breath, waiting for the profound revelation that would follow. "Pay attention," the master whispered. The students waited for more. Surely this could not be the complete teaching. They expected elaboration, explanation, deeper wisdom to follow these simple words. But the master simply closed his eyes again and seemed to settle back into rest. One brave student, thinking perhaps the master had not finished his thought, gently touched his hand. "Master, forgive me, but is that all? Pay attention. We hoped for something more profound, something that would guide us through the years ahead without your presence." The master's eyes opened once more, and in them, the students saw something that might have been amusement. "You want more?" he asked, his voice slightly stronger now. "Very well. I will elaborate." Again they leaned in, certain now that the deeper teaching was coming. "Pay very close attention," he said. And then he died, his final breath leaving his body with those words. His last gift to his students, delivered not in complex philosophy or esoteric doctrine, but in the simplest possible instruction. The students sat in stunned silence, unsure whether to laugh or cry. Some felt disappointed that they had not received the profound transmission they expected. Others felt confused, wondering what they were supposed to do with such a simple teaching. But one student, the eldest, began to smile through his tears. "Don't you see?" he said to the others. "This is perfect. This is everything. The master's entire life teaching compressed into 3 words. Pay close attention. What else is there? What else have we ever been taught but to be completely present, completely aware, completely here for whatever arises?" As they sat with the master's body through the night, keeping vigil in the traditional way, the teaching began to penetrate deeper. Every other instruction they had ever received was contained in these simple words. When the master had taught them meditation, what was he teaching but to pay attention to breath, to body, to mind? When he had guided them in daily activities, what was he asking but that they pay attention to each task, each moment, each experience? They realized that paying attention was not the beginning of practice, but its entirety. That presence itself was not preparation for awakening, but awakening itself. That the profound truth they had been seeking through years of study and practice was always available in the simple act of being completely here, completely now, completely attentive to what actually is. One student remembered a time when the master had been teaching them to wash dishes. "Pay attention to the water temperature," he had said. "Pay attention to the feeling of the bowl in your hands. Pay attention to the sound of scrubbing, the sight of soap bubbles, the smell of cleaning herbs. When you pay complete attention to washing a dish, you are practicing the same attention that the Buddha practiced under the Bodhi tree." Another student recalled the master's guidance during meditation. "Do not seek special states or mystical visions," he had instructed. "Simply pay attention to what is actually present. Breath entering, breath leaving, sound arising, sound fading, thought appearing, thought dissolving. The whole of Buddhist practice is contained in this simple attention." As the night wore on and the students maintained their vigil, they found themselves naturally following the master's final teaching. They paid attention to the sounds of night insects. They paid attention to their breathing, their grief, their memories. They paid attention to the coolness of air, the hardness of the floor they sat on, the flickering of candles illuminating the master's peaceful face. And in that attention, something shifted. The grief did not disappear, but it was held within something larger, a spacious awareness that could contain all experiences without being overwhelmed by any of them. This awareness, they realized, had been what their master was pointing toward all along. Not something to achieve in the future, but something to recognize right now through the simple act of paying attention. The Buddha's final words to his disciples were, "All conditioned things are impermanent. Work out your salvation with diligence." This teaching and the Master's final instruction are the same. Diligence is not about striving harder, but about paying closer attention. Salvation is not somewhere else, but here, discovered through complete presence to what is. Why do we overlook the simple instruction to pay attention, always seeking something more complex or exotic? Modern conditioning trains us to believe that profound truths must be difficult to understand, requiring specialized knowledge or esoteric practices. We become suspicious of simple teachings, assuming they must be superficial because they are accessible. Buddhist wisdom recognizes that the deepest truths are often the simplest. They are difficult, not because they are complicated, but because they require complete commitment. Anyone can understand intellectually the instruction to pay attention. But actually paying attention, moment after moment, day after day, year after year, this is the work of a lifetime. The teaching contains everything. When you pay close attention to your experience, you discover impermanence directly. You see thoughts arising from nowhere and dissolving back into nowhere. You witness sensations appearing and disappearing. You observe how emotional states that seemed so solid are actually fluid and changing. This direct perception of impermanence is far more transformative than intellectual understanding. When you pay attention, you also discover not self. You notice that thoughts think themselves, that breath breathes without your control, that awareness is aware without effort. The doer you believed yourself to be is revealed as a construction, a story told by the mind rather than a solid entity directing experience. When you pay attention, you encounter suffering and its causes directly. You see how grasping creates tension, how aversion generates resistance, how ignorance breeds confusion. And in seeing these patterns clearly, through attention rather than analysis, they begin to lose their grip. Most importantly, when you pay close attention, you discover that the peace you seek is not somewhere else, not in some future moment after you have practiced enough or understood enough. It is right here, in this breath, this sound, this sensation. The awareness that pays attention is itself the peace you seek. It has never been disturbed, never been confused, never been separate from what you essentially are. The practice suggested by this final teaching is perhaps the simplest and most challenging of all. Just pay attention. Pay attention when you eat, tasting fully rather than consuming mechanically. Pay attention when you walk, feeling each step rather than treating movement as merely transportation from one place to another. Pay attention when you listen to others, hearing actually hearing rather than planning your response. Pay attention when you work, bringing full presence to tasks rather than mentally racing ahead to what comes next. Pay attention to what causes you stress, not analyzing or fixing, just noticing clearly. When you pay close attention to stress, you often discover it is made of thoughts about past or future, judgments about how things should be different, resistance to what actually is. This clear seeing, this simple attention, often dissolves stress more effectively than any strategy to eliminate it. Pay attention to moments of peace and ease. Rather than rushing past them toward the next challenge, pause and recognize them fully. Let attention itself become the practice that cultivates what is wholesome and releases what is harmful. The Buddha said, "The one who masters the gray every day is a hero." The gray every day is where attention either flourishes or withers. Exotic retreats and intense practices have their place, but the real test is whether you can pay attention while doing dishes, sitting in traffic, having a difficult conversation, facing disappointment. Tonight, as you complete this journey through Buddhist wisdom stories, you take with you the Master's final teaching. Pay attention. Pay very close attention. Not tomorrow, not after you have prepared more thoroughly, but right now, to this breath, this sensation, this moment of being alive. Pay attention to the softness of your bed or wherever you rest. Pay attention to the darkness that invites sleep. Pay attention to the slowing of your breath as your body prepares for restoration. Pay attention to the thoughts that drift through consciousness like clouds across the sky. Pay attention to the awareness itself that knows all these experiences without being changed by any of them. In this simple attention, you discover what all the stories and teachings have been pointing toward. Not a destination to reach, but a way of being to embody. Not something to understand intellectually, but something to live completely. Not a future achievement, but a present recognition. As you release into sleep, let the instruction echo gently through your consciousness. Pay attention. Everything else in spiritual practice flows from this simple commitment. Every moment of genuine attention is a moment of practice, a moment of awakening. A moment of freedom from the stress that comes from living elsewhere in time, caught in regret or worry, memory or anticipation. The Master's final teaching was complete because it was complete. Nothing needed to be added. Pay attention to what is here now. This breath, this moment, this mystery of awareness itself. In this attention, all questions dissolve. In this presence, all seeking ends. In this recognition, you discover you have always been home. Rest now in this knowing. Let attention itself hold you as you drift into sleep, neither grasping nor resisting. Simply present to the gentle movement from waking to sleeping, from doing to being, from seeking to finding what was never lost. The ancient teachers have offered their wisdom across centuries to reach you here, in this moment. Their gift was not information to collect, but attention to embody. Receive this gift fully. Let these teachings dissolve into your being, the way salt dissolves in water, present everywhere, changing everything while remaining invisible. Sleep deeply, friend. Rest completely. And when you wake, remember simply to pay attention. This is the beginning, the middle, and the end of the path. This is the teaching that contains all teachings. This is the practice that includes all practices. This is the awakening that was always present, waiting only for your attention to recognize it. May you be at peace. May you be free from stress. May you pay attention to the miracle of existence itself, this breath, this moment, this irreplaceable now. And in that attention, may you discover the freedom the Buddha promised, available not someday, but this day. Not somewhere else, but right here. Not to someone special, but to you, exactly as you are, paying attention to exactly what is. We at Calm Buddha Path are grateful for your presence. May your heart be calm and your sleep deep.